Show 33 with Scott Green of Wyoming Seminary. I could have sat and talked and listened for hours. If you want to hear more about his philosophies and take on the sport, go check his Rockfin channel out, Go Green. In this show, he talks about two of his four pillars of the sport and also his approach as a dad and what his rules are with his son in lacrosse. Hope you guys enjoy this episode. What's going on, Coach? How you been, man?
Oh yeah, can't complain. Doing well, doing well. How about you?
Yep. Like we said, one day at a time, man. One day at a time. I like what you just said. 12 hours at a time. It's even better.
I think that's the best way to do it at this point is with COVID and with school and everything changing is when I wake up in the morning, I see what happened overnight, check that out, then go about my business for the day. When I sit back down to my computer at 7 at night, I'm like, all right, what happened today? And what are we looking at? So
Right.
chunking it up is the best way to go at this point.
Right. So I guess currently, what's it look like for you guys in the season at this
Yeah,
moment?
I mean, wise, the national preps has got some protocols out and it's got some plans out. We're not going to start wrestling sanctioned competitions till after Christmas, right?
Okay.
So there's a lot of moving parts in there. So if things go well and stay the way they are, then Powerade would be our first competition.
Okay.
And then we've got some testing stuff in place that's going to keep the athletes safe. Some strict kind of practice protocols, and hopefully continue throughout the season with some competitions and wrap it up with the national preps in mid March.
Nice. Nice. So as a coach, take COVID out of the situation, but as far as timing, how's that change your approach and recovery and how hard to push?
Yeah, so that's like a big thing for me with periodization, and I really always have it all mapped out in my head of where we want to go and what we want to be doing. So taking that whole December competitive schedule out of there, that's Ironman,
Right.
that's all of the big events. So generally speaking, we would be starting with a look to hit a mini peak like in December,
Okay.
then train through that and really try to get late February for national preps, have the guys feeling the best that they can possibly feel, and then take a little time off and come back and peak again and try to make a world team.
Nice.
And it's going to be weird, right?
Hmm.
So we've had to adapt and we've had to evolve and change. So we're not going to be competing all that much in December. So we've backed off a little bit on their time on the mat this fall. We've really tried to get them to invest in lifting. Um, got some great coaches that are working with them in the weight room, and really since this hit is to use it as an opportunity to get your body back to 100%, get stronger, and pick and choose when you're going to compete, but really invest in making yourself stronger as a human.
Right. Right. Nice. Nice. I follow along on Rockfin. I love what the
Uh,
message you guys are putting out. Um, real quick, the four pillars, right? Is it
yep,
win the college admission, right?
yep,
Better every day,
yep.
outwork everybody, and lifelong commitment. I guess could you touch on one and four? I know you go in detail on the Rockfin channel, obviously, but those first and last are kind of the big picture things, right?
Yeah, for sure. I think that's always, it takes a while for kids to embrace that because they want goals to be super tangible, and things like, oh, my goal is to win national preps or my goal is to do that. But we try to teach them to have a lifelong relationship with the sport, um, and to see the sport as a vehicle to improve themselves in a variety of different ways.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I mean, like half the stories that you're going to tell from your college days or when you were coaching, like if I ever stopped coaching, I would miss the 15 minutes before practice in the locker room more than I would miss the matches.
Those are the
'Cause
memories, right? That's
that's
what
when it
everyone.
happens, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
you're there and you're like getting to know guys and you're hanging out, and like I often find myself sitting in the middle of those and being like, wow, this is like what it's all about, right? Yeah, sure,
Mhm.
it's great to get your hand raised. That's great to win big duels, but those are the ones that are going to come back to you. So having that, if you're connected to those moments, when I'm talking specifically about number 4, you're never going to walk away from the sport, right? Like, we aren't a sport that engenders lifelong participation of a physical nature. Some
Right.
huge try and are out there with their banged up knees and stuff at 55 years old, or at the Masters tournaments and things like that. And I'm like, man, you guys are crazy. But
No,
if you're
thanks.
a golfer growing up, if you're a golfer growing up, you're gonna play golf till
Hmm.
as long as you can still walk, right? If you're a runner, you can continue to run. There's a bunch of sports that are like that. Guys playing beer league softball that were baseball players before. Wrestling, that your time on the mat is finite. So you have to, and we have to, as a sport, keep people connected to it in some way. And that's what I mean by saying, like, make a life commitment to the sport. It doesn't have to be as a coach. Sometimes it's as an official.
Right.
Sometimes it's as a team leader. There's a lot of people. Sometimes, hopefully, for a lot of programs, sometimes it'll be as a donor or a sponsor, if you're fortunate enough to be able to do that. But keeping our base and expanding that base, to me, is critical to instill in kids when they're 16, 17, 18 years old.
Right.
And we obviously want to connect it to our institution, and we do at national preps every year.
Hmm.
We have alumni from the 1940s, the 1950s, all the way up till guys who graduated a couple of years ago. But
Nice.
it doesn't have to necessarily be that way. It can be just committed to the sport in one way or another. So that's what I'm really trying to hone in with
Hmm.
guys for number 4. Like, we want you to love the sport so much that you're not going to leave it.
Right.
Uh, and then with number 1, like, that's again that vehicle, that using the sport to connect to an institution, to open a door that might not otherwise be open for you, so that you can get to a place that's going to transform your life.
Hmm.
And that's number 1, right? And we feel that way with kids who come to SEM, so they're getting it early, that transformational experience, of an institution. But we want to continue that and get them to the right fit school for them, to win that game, to use that talent that you have to open a door that might not otherwise ever be open for you. So those are
Nice.
kind of those two in a nutshell. Yeah.
No, that's great, and it's
Yeah.
it's a behind a successful program. Those are what you're wanting, right? Because the college admission and moving on to bigger and better things as a student athlete, right? Kind of provide you the opportunity to commit back to the sport, whether it's time or financially, right? I
Yeah.
was just
No,
talking to Jody Burnett this morning. They got middle school national duels coming up this weekend, and she was just talking about some of the names that come back every year to help set up. Like, someone texts her Monday, "Hey, can I come Thursday and help set up," or whatever it may be? And she's like, those are the type of people, that make a program or an event go. What they're not donating the big money, but if they're donating time and things like that, it all adds up, right?
yeah, everybody's got a part to play, right?
Mhm.
Like, if we can just get everybody who wrestled that lives within 30 or 40 minutes of every Division 1 college
Right.
to get out to some dual meets, if they feel that connection to the sport, even if they were an average wrestler in high school. I mean, like everyone who goes to an NCAA Division 1 basketball game, they weren't a big time basketball recruit. They just
Right.
enjoyed the game, right? And they
Right.
played it when they were young, and they like to go. So we got to borrow a little bit from that and steal from some other places, and make sure that everyone has that connection to the community.
Right. Right. So, 10 years in, right? At SEM,
Yeah, I think 10 or
11,
11. Yeah,
11. Okay.
2010, 2011 was my first year. Yeah, I think.
So, what, 2017, you had an article, letter to yourself. Was that 17, 18? Letter
Sounds
to my
about
young,
right.
right? Letter to my younger self. Pretty insightful stuff. You talk about, right, giving up the parties or stuff you're going to miss as being a coach, right? In a nutshell, right? Kind of the long-term commitment.
Yeah.
Um, I guess, what would you write to yourself that first year at SEM? What would you tell to yourself, in a similar format?
Yeah. So going back, every wrestling junkie is kind of come up through. I mean, social media now, but before that, you had message boards, and where I was coaching, in the Binghamton area before I came to SEM as a high school coach and then a college coach. Uh, I had a lot of good kids, and Blair would always come calling, right? or vice versa. They would be interested in Blair. So, like the big chatter out there would be one set of people who would be like, "Oh, this is ridiculous. Blair recruits. It's not fair. It's not fair." And then the other side would say, "Well, if it's that easy, go ahead and do it. Go,
Right, right. Go right ahead. Right.
and go ahead and do it." So when I walked into that opportunity, talking to John Gordon and having some knowledge of Sam, I think my first thoughts were, "Yeah, they're right. Now I have this opportunity, so it's time to go do it." But in 2010, that was not even like on the radar, right?
Mhm.
Like I think we won 2 matches against Blair
Oh, wow.
that year. So I think that what I would have said to myself 10 years from then is like, yeah, it's possible you can do it, right? You've got the resources, you've got the connections. This is a tremendous institution. Um, Prove those people that were throwing that up there on the message board, right or wrong, depending on which group of them it was, that you can do it, that you can get somewhere, and figure it out and get to that point. And so I think that was an idea 10 years ago. And I remember people associated with the program, boosters, people like that, were like, "Oh, yeah, we don't really want that. We just want you to be good." But we know Blair's better than us, and I was kind of looking around the room, and I'm like, okay, you can be super appreciative of that, but I'm like, man, we want to win, like
Right, right.
let's go, let's get this done. And so 2014, first year that we won national preps, that was pretty special, and I think since then they still have the edge. I mean, obviously they're still the gold standard, but we've picked away at it a little bit. We've won preps twice. We've beaten them in a duel a couple times. Beat them at Ironman a couple times. So I think at this point in time, would I have been able to predict that 10 years ago? No. I mean, logically, it wouldn't have made sense, but I felt like that's where I wanted to go with the program.
Mhm.
And we've been fortunate enough to make progress in that direction.
Nice, nice. So, like you said, you're at Binghamton prior. Any Coach Pop stories?
Okay,
If you
so
pick
Coach
one.
Pop, yeah, yeah. I've known Pat since he was a kid, right?
Oh, nice, nice.
So yeah, I couldn't tell you the year, but he was on the Fargo national team for Team New York when I was coaching there, and coaching on Team New York, and so I've known him a long time. And I was coaching high school in the. It's a very similar story to the one I'm just telling you. Maybe I think we've influenced each other over the years, and that's kind of our crew, like Papadatos, Beasley, like all those guys coming out of that Binghamton area, that program. Still close with all those guys now. But Tony Roby was at Binghamton,
Okay, wow.
there, and I had connected with him through my club, and he was kind of like, "I want you to come on the staff next year." And I was like, "All right, happy to do it. Help some local recruiting, things like that." And so I'm like, "All right, I'm going to be a coach at Binghamton next year." And maybe 3 weeks after Tony told me that, he was gone. He got the job at Tech, and I was like, "All right, so now what am I going to do? Am I going to keep coaching high school?" And the whole process is going on, and so Pat Pop gets hired, and he's like, "Hey, let's meet. I want to chat with you a little bit." Um, and when Tony was there that one year, like they were just dreadful, right? It was like
Oh,
a really rough team, and I'm like, this is going to take a while. And so I meet Pat at a Dunkin' Donuts in Vestal, New York, and I hadn't seen him in a couple years, and he's talking to me, and we're having a conversation, and he's like, "Look, he's like, we're going to be top 25 program in the country in the next 4 or 5 years." He's like, "Are you on board?" And I was like, "What are you talking about, Pat? Like these guys, I mean, like we don't have anybody who can wrestle, like." He's like, no. He's like, and he was just so sure of it that I was like, well, I got to get on board here. And in my brain, as I'm getting back in my car and driving home, I'm like, this guy's crazy. Like we legitimately have a bunch of kids who maybe they weren't even New York State qualifiers on the team.
wow.
And like it's not a destination, it's not a spot. Maybe we're starting to get some interest from some New York kids, but like we can't beat anybody, like let alone
The top 25.
country. But Pat was just like, this is how we're going to do it. We're going to do it. This is how it's going to go down. And he was just so sure of it that I was like, well, you know what? I'm going to jump on board, and we're either going to suck for a long time and we're all going to be miserable, or this crazy guy's gonna turn it around and get it headed in the right direction. And then 4 years in, we're like 14th at NCAA, multiple All-Americans at the big show. And I was like, same thing with Sam and Blair. I'm like, well, that's crazy, but yeah, it happened. So yeah, I could probably sit here for hours and talk
Yeah,
about all those things, but that's one that I really remember clearly. Yeah.
that's awesome. Yeah, Coach Brees mentions, him and credits him to a conversation they had, a few months in. He's at that point, he's like, what am I doing here? And then they had that conversation. That's kind of what inspired him, he said, to kind of,
Yeah.
jump in full go as a coach. So, but yeah, Coach Brees is a good guy. Any stories about
Breeze,
John?
yeah, sure. So Breeze, he's awesome because, I mean, he was my roommate, coach in Fargo, in
Oh, really? Nice.
for a couple of years, and I'm a pretty boring dude. Like, you're not going to find me doing anything at camp other than maybe reading a book in my room or hanging out. And he was the perfect roommate, right? Because roommate, sometimes you're in that Fargo camp and you're like, oh, I got a 7 o'clock session, and your roommate, you don't know they're coming in at like 3 a.m. It's
Right.
vacation.
Right.
Or, hey, let's go do this afterwards. Breeze and I got along real well, and he used to kick the crap out of my New York kids when he was a kid too, coaching against him in Fargo. But he's such an unassuming, cerebral kind of guy, and he and I always connected really well.
Yeah, he's a good guy. Great guy. I'm glad we have him here in Ohio.
Yeah.
So yeah, you mentioned reading. You're an English teacher too at
I do, yeah. I'm not teaching this year. I'm kind of helping out a little bit more with our admissions.
Okay.
But I've taught English for a long time. Yep. Mm-hmm.
And then you graduated from Binghamton, correct? And then got right into coaching?
Yeah, for the most part, I did. I've always worked with kids and taught in one way or another. I was coaching before I graduated from Binghamton. I was coaching when I was like a junior or senior.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
I wasn't winning any national titles or anything like that. And I was like, look, if I'm gonna, like we went back to before, if I'm gonna continue to be connected to the sport, it's not gonna be as an athlete. It's gonna be as a coach. So
Mm-hmm.
I got a job coaching at Union Endicott High School, which is a big time school. I was coaching their junior high team in New York, and then it just kind of went from there, coaching in that general area. Yeah.
Was there a certain point you remember, or you just knew from the beginning you wanted to coach? Or was there a certain point, some kind of interaction with a coach, like, that's what I want to do? Do you remember that point?
Yeah. I mean, going all the way back to being in high school, I think I knew I
Oh,
wanted to
really?
coach. I
Wow.
had a great varsity coach. We weren't from a power program, and he would like kind of come to me because I was a student of the sport, and he'd be like, all right, what's our best lineup for this match? And I was like, yeah, okay, I can figure this out. Right. So we went from a not so good team to a division champ in Western New York, which is
Oh,
nothing.
wow.
At that time, it was like, woohoo, like,
Right.
and then I had some good connections. Actually, one of my club coaches at the time is Joe Rotundo, Tony's dad,
Oh, cool.
from Clarence Wrestling Club, and he was just this kind of guru who everyone kind of wanted to be mentored by. So I was like, man, I'd love to have that type of connection with kids. And all the way through college, I was just around guys, and like the most important people in my life from the time I was 12 years old were coaches. And
Mm-hmm.
how do you not want to do that, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
how do you not want to be that person for somebody else when you learn so much from people like that? So, through college and in high school, and then just jumping right into it, I was able and lucky enough to be around good coaches and pick and little bits and pieces from all of them and start formulating my own ideas.
Nice. That's awesome. And not many guys at that age know. I guess
Yeah.
maybe it's that boring part of you, right? Just
Yeah,
kind of.
yeah. There's this funny story. My mom, um, there was a second grade like art project, and I didn't remember it. But when I got my first coaching job, she had it where like every other kid in the class was like, "I want to be a football player. I want to be a baseball player. This and that." And it's like, "I want to be a coach." I would tell the players on the team what to do, so on and so forth. And I didn't remember it, but she like got it framed and gave it to me when I got my
Oh, nice. That's sweet. That's pretty cool.
it's pretty cool, and I
Yeah.
Well, I guess it went subconsciously all the way back to that point in time, and I didn't remember it, but that's
Wow.
pretty. Yeah,
That's real cool. That's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
So, did you do any other sports growing up?
Yeah, I mean everything, right? Like
Nice.
typical kid from a small town. We did everything. We Western New York. You gotta play like pond hockey, Little league baseball, little league football, wrestling, just about all of those. But by the time I got to high school, I was mostly just wrestling. Yep.
Nice. And your son's in lacrosse, right? So you're
Relax
lacrosse
pro.
dad, lax
Yeah,
dad.
no, for sure. Yeah, he is into it. We've been traveling most of the summer and spring, going to some club lacrosse tournaments. He's got a great coach who I really like a lot, a young guy, who just does a great job with him because I don't know anything about lacrosse, and that was always like
That's
the
what I was
real
going to ask if you knew anything about it.
nothing. No, I
Okay.
all I can tell him, and this is our rule is I mean like no negativity and good posture and good attitude.
Mhm.
And if you follow all three of those rules, then you and I are never going to have a conversation other than I really liked watching you play. I really enjoy going to tournaments with you because I don't have any feedback to give him. The
Mhm.
only times when he and I are going to have a chat is if he's not following those three rules, or what two. But I mean, I just want to see him good posture and attitude out there, look like he's enjoying the game and representing himself well, and then being positive. And he's a teenager, so there's times when we do have to have conversations,
Right, right.
but they're not about stick skills or anything like that. He always asks me, he's like, "So what'd you think?" I'm like, "I loved it, man. It was great watching you." And he
Mhm.
wants a little more feedback, and I'm like, "You got to talk to Coach Jay about that. Like, he's the one who's going to give you that lacrosse feedback." But it's been good because he's always chosen sports that I don't know a
Mhm.
ton about. So that car conversation is always like, "Did you have fun? Did you have a good time?" It's never technical. It's never anything that's going to make us butt heads. So I think that him not wrestling is, I've always looked at it as a blessing.
That's awesome. Yeah, my daughters don't wrestle, but they're in other sports, and
Yeah,
I'm learning as a dad. You teenage daughters, and some younger ones like they're doing sports I don't know, and I that's the best part about it. I tell people I was like I get to be dad for once, instead of coach.
yeah.
It's
Although I will say sometimes the worst experience in the world is being a fan at a game. I'm so happy that I don't sit at when I was recruiting at Binghamton and I had to
yeah.
sit in the bleacher. I was like, oh my god, it's like crazy up here. Like, what is going on? Like, these people are nuts. I experienced that lacrosse too because like I've learned that every single lacrosse parent knows the rules more than the official does.
Just in
And
any sport,
I've
right?
been watching them play for 6 years and I still don't know the rules. But they seem to. So it gets a little crazy out there watching games. So I'm glad that I coach because it's you're removed from that a little bit.
Right, right. You had a take on lacrosse compared to wrestling recently,
Mhm.
and I think it was nailed spot on. You want to talk a little bit about that, the D3?
Yeah, sure. So you know, I got myself in a little trouble a couple of years back, unintentionally. I was talking about signing day and stuff like that, and I was just trying to clarify that, like, you sign for Division 1, Division 2, Division 3 is a little bit different process, and people kind of took that as me saying like Division 1 is the only way and everything else doesn't matter. Well, I was like a Division 3 athlete, so I don't feel that way at all. But I think it's we've kind of conflated all those things together. Like, you don't sign a letter of intent to go to Division 3. So I was just trying to clarify things. Have respect for all those guys, but I'm not sure our community does. So like lacrosse, like kids will be like, I'm committing to a Division 3 college when they're sophomores in high school. And I was kind of like, that was tough for me to process at first because I was like, well, no, you're not really, like that doesn't really mean anything. But lacrosse kids are just so appreciative of the opportunity to play at the next level, that their sport is growing, right?
Nice.
And so, like, if you look at the percentage of, I think Jason Bryan tweeted about this, like the percentage of programs that are of schools that are
Mhm.
Division 3 institutions that have lacrosse, it's high, and ours are shrinking a little bit, and it's about that participation that they're getting. So, like there are people in our community that would be like, oh, a kid committed to a Division 3 school, and they would be like, you'd be ridiculed,
Hmm.
or
Hmm.
like, oh my God, I can't believe he's saying that. But in lacrosse, people are like, oh wow, that's awesome. Um,
Nice.
and so Kieran, my son, and he goes to these like showcases and things like that. And my wrestling head is like, why are we going to this if there's only Division 3 coaches there? Because you could probably go to those schools anyway. But like lacrosse dad, I'm like, wow, these coaches are really like working hard to get kids interested in their school, and they're growing, and it's because the kids value that experience. And so like we're guilty sometimes of having a D1 or bust mentality.
Right.
Uh, happens at SEM all the time. Kids come in there and they're not coming to SEM to be a Division 3 athlete. Let's
Right.
be honest, right? But oftentimes, with some growth and some maturity, they wind up going D1 and then coming back to D3. But we don't have a real mechanism for getting them to feel great about that Division 3 experience right out of the gate and help those programs flourish. Lacrosse has that,
Hmm.
and so I think the Division 1 programs in the two sports are very close to the same numbers, but at that non-scholarship level, they are killing us. And there's a lot of things that we can learn from watching how they operate.
Right. Right. You even mentioned what some of the colleges have club programs that kids commit to, right?
Yeah, no, hundred
Yeah.
percent.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like again, my wrestling head, I can't help myself. Sometimes we had a kid from our school, and he had some nice like Division 3 opportunities in lacrosse, but he wanted to go to a big time Division 1 school. Um, so he did, and he's playing club lacrosse there, and he loves it. And like in my head, I'm like, well, you're just playing club, but like on like our club webpage, they're like, oh yeah, he's here playing in they have an actual like league, and I think wrestling does too, but
Hmm.
lacrosse just seems better organized in their club league. So you can have a school that's a big time school that has a varsity team and a club team, and kids are getting valuable experiences out of both of those, and their club sports are pretty organized too. Yeah.
It's a culture thing too, right? Do you have any recommendations how that culture would change? I mean,
Yeah.
for D3, to kind of.
Yeah, I think it's tough.
Mm.
I like wrestling culture
Right.
better. The cross we'll go like we'll go to a tournament in lacrosse and there'll be like 20 teams there and we'll only play like 4 games. And I'm like, wait,
There's
we won.
16
We
other
should be
people.
playing
Yeah.
those teams too. And everyone is just getting their car going home happy that they played 4 games. And I'm like, wait a minute, like they're undefeated, we're undefeated. How come we're not
Who's the winner? Right.
beating it? So I mean that's that and sometimes I'm just like, oh, just shut up, like this is not what it's about. So I mean, that's might be part of the problem, right? Is that we're so
Right.
focused on proving ourselves and who's the best, and these kids are just content to go and play and have a meaningful full experience doing that, and maybe that's what's translating into. And I don't think that's ever going to fly.
Right.
In
Right.
we're going to show up and be like, oh, we're just going to have four-man brackets and everyone's going to participate.
Yeah, that's not going to work.
but I think they do a really nice job making all kids feel valued. And so when maybe we can find some ways to do that a little bit more too. You know,
Yeah. Cool. Cool. So a little bit of.
the immediate response to that is going to be like, oh yeah, sure, everybody gets a trophy, but it's more than that.
Right. Right. 100%.
Mhm.
So a little bit about your program, some of the coaches you have there. I
Yeah.
guess who do you have there?
So we're very very fortunate to have a tremendous amount of support. So we have a big staff and we need it. We have 42 kids on our boys roster and we have
Nice.
28 girls this year.
Oh wow.
So Joe Ravelli is my longtime assistant coach. Joe is a four-time NCAA qualifier at Hofstra, wrestling there for Tommy Ryan. He's a local guy, came back to the area. He was a state PIAA state champ. So he's great to have on the mat. I don't know if you know Greg Hagel, but Greg wrestled at Blair and Northwestern.
Okay.
So he's another guy that really does a great job with our team. The head girls coach is Erin Vandiver, who's been on the USA Wrestling staff
Wow.
forever. Another PA girl, who's been the assistant coach at some of our Olympic teams. So we have Maya Nelson now, as junior world champ, who is working with our girls, and just a ton of different guys. Willie Weber's are one of our main club coaches. Pat Heck wrestled at Bloomsburg. CC Weber's in town, one of the best girls wrestlers from 15 years ago. So our kids, boys and girls, get the benefit of a wide variety of coaching philosophies, coaching styles, and we work pretty well in tandem with each other. It's great to see in terms of women's program growth. Like Adeline Gray was on our staff for a couple of years.
Oh, wow.
She's training for a little event this year, so she's not around all that
That's
much.
sweet.
But like our guys would come into the room and they'd be like, "Oh, we're getting coached by a girl today," and it didn't even like make them skip a beat, And now I'm sure
Sweet.
it helped that it was Adeline Gray or
Right.
Vandiver, but they would just walk in and it wasn't unusual to them at all.
That's
And
awesome.
so that has really kind of helped us with the transition of bringing the girls program in 4 years ago now, and having access to both sets of coaches is great for both sets of athletes.
Oh, for sure. I'm sure.
Yep.
Yeah. So, does that change? Is there any differences, about when in the college administration now dealing with, not dealing with, I shouldn't say it that way, but now having girls in the room, um, you know, in there, is it change that process? Because now you have maybe new schools that have girls or anything. Does that change that pillar a little bit?
A little bit, yeah. It's about to take off, right?
Right, right.
So right now, we started the program at Wyoming Seminary, and part of that goal is to hopefully use our platform as a number one program in the country, to showcase girls wrestling. Um, and so last year, senior, a couple of them, just to mention, like Sophie Smith is going out to Oklahoma City, and to wrestle for them, which is a traditional girls program that's been around for a long time and has a really successful track record. So she's headed that direction. But then Caitlin Walker, who is not as interested in those schools, is at Columbia, right? Um, so she's taken that kind of RTC path, and down there training there, but also on the Columbia boys team. And Zach Tonelli talks about that all the time about Columbia wants to be the first Ivy to start a program. So we got Bree Santos and girls like that in the room. And Caitlin took that path, but Sophie took the traditional kind of girls wrestling path. And we have girls at all those. We have girls at King. We have girls at McKendree. Um, but we're hopeful as we continue to work with men's college coaching staffs, and work with. There's a group that's really pushing for it in the IWA right now. We're hopeful that they'll see the benefit of having a girls program side by side with their men's program, so that a little girl growing up wrestling, by the time she gets to that stage in life as a senior at Wyoming Seminary, hopefully,
Right,
right,
right.
will have that same range of opportunities that the boys have right now, and that the boys benefit from that will be that kind of gender equity, insulate ourselves from cuts because we have both of them in there and are alleviating some of those Title IX concerns. So that's kind of long range planning for Sam, aside from just getting some girls on the world team, and
Right, right.
and some of those tangible things right out of the gate. We've got some long range goals for that program too.
Nice, nice. So, you talk, culture of the program, the philosophies kind of all boils down to trust, right? Like you said, you
Yeah.
got a lot of coaches there.
Mhm.
When you bring someone in new, how do you, build that right from the rip and
Yeah.
build that culture?
I mean, it's accelerated too because 75% of our athletes on both sides, maybe a little bit more, live in our boarding community too.
Okay, right.
So it's sink or swim in terms of trust pretty quickly out of the gate, right? Because not only are you coaching these student athletes, and not only are they coming to your practices every day, but they actually live in our community.
Mhm.
So we've been a school since 1844. We've had borders for 100 years. So there are things about our school, and that's what made it attractive to the girls starting program there. was there are just checks and balances and things within our system that allow trust to kind of build organically, right? Your coach lives down the hall from you. They're
Right.
coming in and making sure you're studying at night. You're eating meals with your coaches, so that really helps. That it's not the ideal situation for everybody, but um, spending as much time as you do with your student athletes and vice versa gives you the opportunity to build those relationships a little stronger than if you were just coaching them after school.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's a strong flavor, right? It's an acquired taste, but it definitely helps with that. And then we obviously plan a lot of stuff early. We don't get voice wise. We don't get on the mats much till October. So some of our September stuff is aimed at team building exercises, conditioning, combine those type of things so that these kids who are 14, 15, 16 years old that are living away from home, some of them from California, some of them from the South, they're really feeling supported and coming into the fold early on, to feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves.
Nice. Rob Gore said, "You guys have a old bank? Is that where the restroom?" Or...
Yeah. So it's called the Great Hall.
Okay.
And it's like a bank from like, I'm talking like when banks were the biggest building in town, so it's got like the marble walls, it's got chandeliers on the ceiling. It's just a big, huge open space, like probably early 20th century when you walked in, and the bank was like just built to last. The vault is still there.
What do you have in the vault?
Well, it's chained open. I think
Oh.
they're afraid that I'm going to accidentally lock somebody in there. So you can't actually like open it all the way. So I think there's like some storage boxes and stuff like that. But the safe has some stuff in it. There's a vault and a safe. So the safe's got some cleaning supplies and some gear and
Oh,
stuff
nice.
like
That'd
that.
be a...
We have a big old boardroom on the second floor. That's we call it our trophy room, and we do some film review and some studying and stuff in there. So it's quite the spectacle. Just a good old building with some character, and going to get pinned sometime. You're going to look up, you're going to see a chandelier. We can only change the lights once a year because it's a pain in the ass.
You get up there, sure.
Well, so you gotta like roll the mats up and then just change out all the lights. So it'll get to be like May or something like that, and half the lights will be out, and it's like dark. Because it's a chore, but we love it, and it's a great space, and it fits with who our school is, with some old character kind of scenery and stuff like that. We're very fortunate to have that space.
Nice. Anything else unique? I mean, or anything that's changed significantly since you've been there in the last 10, 11
Yeah, I
years?
think that's the biggest one. We moved
Yeah.
into that like 2 or 3 years
Okay.
when we were there. They used to use it as a performing hall, so they had like risers and stuff like that in there, and you can still see some of the stage lighting and stuff like that. But we built a new performing arts center on campus, so that became like available, and they were like, "Hey, what do you need to do to make it a wrestling room?" I'm like, "Man, all I got to do is roll out mats. Like, we don't need to retrofit it or anything like
Hmm.
that." But
Hmm.
we've added some stuff over the years. We've got um some we've got a shot sled, which
Oh,
was
nice. Nice. Yeah, we got one of those too. Yeah.
Joel McMullen is a Wyoming Seminary
Okay.
graduate. He's a prep national champ at Sem, and he's the co-inventor of that.
Yeah, it's right out of PA, right?
Right on,
Made in
yeah.
PA.
So we've got that. We've got the treadmills. We've got all sorts of nice equipment in there for the guys and girls to use too.
All right. So you have any Coach Bree said you have some jokes. You had any good dad or coach jokes?
Oh, geez, Brees, man, what are you doing to
If you don't, that's all right.
put me in the spot? Let's see. Um, okay, so here's one that I told the kids the other day. I walk into the room, and it's all about my delivery.
Right.
Kind of a deadpan kind of guy, so it might not come across as well on camera. I'm like, guys, like, sometimes I like to grab my knees, tuck my chin, and lean forward. And they're looking at me like, what? I'm like, that's just how I roll.
That's a good one. That's a good dad
Yeah,
coach joke. Where you want to go?
strong flavor, right? Like acquired taste there. Like half the kids are like, you reacted, and the other ones are like, just walk away.
Yeah, no, that's a good one. So my high school coach, I work alongside right now. And he's same joke, literal humor. It's all day. It's fun though. It keeps it, you know.
Teenagers, they either love it or they hate it, but it
Right.
keeps.
I'm sure they appreciate it, even if they hate it. They're like, oh, here he is again, right?
Yeah, no, I'll do that too. Like I remember, we'll do like 40-minute goes, like on and off every 1 minute, and like someone will be running the clock, so you're on for a minute, and then you're off for a minute, you're on for a minute, and you're off for a minute, and I'll just walk over and like drop jokes like that to kids when they're like trying to like get their breath back and breathe and recover, and they'll just be like, "Just go away,"
Just leave me alone, right? They'll appreciate it one day, because they're going to be using them. They'll remember them. They'll use them, right?
A little bit, right? Because they're trying to be like focused, and you're trying to break them. Yeah.
Yeah. So, literature, English background, any books on leadership or anything you kind of recommend your students or?
Meditations.
Okay.
Is a good one. Anything I like when we're talking about leadership. I like the philosophy aspect of that a little bit, especially the Stoics. So we'll talk about that a lot on our team from time to time. Good to great is a really good one that I've given to kids before.
Jim Collins, right?
Yeah, right, exactly. So like I'm a sucker for those books. I probably read one a month.
Oh, nice.
Those type of things. Yeah. The deep practice there. That one is a good one too. So there's a lot of different things that you can always sample from. But when I'm really trying to think about boiling down coaching philosophy and stuff that'll be helpful to kids, I'm hitting them with podcasts or some philosophy stuff as much as I am trying to give them a whole book to read.
What do you do when they're not so receptive? Or I guess you're kind of dealing with a different type of student athlete though, so they're probably pretty receptive, right?
I try to find something that is going to connect with them off the mat, and I give them off the mat work every week. So there are kids. I think of like a Connor Keeveman who's at Columbia now, or a Bo Bartlett who would just consume everything that I gave them. Right. So like I give them a podcast, a match to break down, an article and something else. Those guys would just every single one.
They eat it up, huh?
Yeah. But some kids are like, yeah, I'm not listening to like an hour podcast, dude. Like, but they're gonna dive into the match, right? Usually like a match that features technique that we're working on that week, or something that's connected to what we're plotting out and planning. That's part of our weekly practice plan, where someone really like executed something that we were doing really well in a match, or if we're talking about closing out periods, or if we're talking about mat returns or things like that. We're trying to things that are reinforcing the lesson. So most kids, if they can't get into the podcast or the article or something like that, they, at the minimum, are gonna we'll look at that mat work, that match, as their off the mat work.
Nice. And you guys just had a live streaming event recently in the
We
area?
did, yeah. Last week we were very fortunate to feature Kennedy Blades, one of our athletes who's a junior in high school, making her senior level debut. We have an incredible sponsor, Tim Payne at My House Sportswear, who's really doing well in the wrestling space right now. And he's a local guy, and he sponsors several senior level women athletes. So he had some of those girls in town giving a clinic, and we were like, hey, why don't we roll out Kennedy getting kind of tuned up for UWWs this week? She can wrestle Hannah Gladden, who's one of the top girls at her weight as a senior. So we built a card around that.
Nice.
Got a mat over at a local hotel and conference center, and rolled it out and had some good girls matches. Girls, high school, boys, youth. Tried to pepper it with some different age groups and different styles.
Nice. You working on any others, or just kind of focused on that January?
Yeah, so we're gonna take some boys to Journeyman, but we'll see what happens in December. Brian and I at Blair have talked about building something like that as a preseason event. Maybe more club related, because you never know what you're going to get during the season, right? So maybe we can come up with, Blairstown Wrestling Club versus Excalibur, which is our club. And maybe it's not a straight duel, but pick some matchups, get some girls matches on that. Maybe we get a senior level match, or we have enough alumni wrestling in college right now.
Right.
Maybe we get a featured alumni match or a throwback match or something like that between Blair and Sem kids. So we're talking about doing that in December, but everything, like I said before, 12 hours, right? So that's part of the plan going forward at some point, and then
Nice.
hopefully roll into some type of abbreviated season. Yeah.
Right. Awesome. Anything else you want to ask, share, tell?
No, man, like I appreciate the deep dives that you do. It's always good. I got a sauna in my backyard, so it's perfect length for
What kind of infrared, or just a regular sauna, or
oh no, like old school. Yeah, outdoor barrel sauna. Finished barrel sauna. So
nice. I need to do more research. My brother he wrestled too, close, lives down the street, and I got this perfect corner in my basement under the steps that a sauna would be great. So I got to do my research.
Go infrared there for sure.
Infrared.
Yeah, I would think. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's that. Like I said, those are good times to put stuff on and to keep learning. I listened to Sorchinsky the other week, and I think that, like, just listening to the things he had to say sprung into a 100 text exchange with him.
Oh, cool.
Stuff like that. And honestly, it kind of really made me rethink some stuff. So I think anytime that you got good content out there, that's I think Rockfin's all about. I think there's a lot of people who are doing things that run the gamut from fun and entertaining, where you're just kind of like, oh man, can't wait to listen to Zach at Stalemates. Like, give us
give us a recap of Willie Trials.
And then you can jump into something a little bit more long form, which is probably not the same market, but it's still enjoyable to have. Yeah.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I'm learning as I go here, and some good conversations. Trying to archive them, and actually have Kevin Linich on too, another official. He his is he'll be dropped by the time this one goes live. We already recorded, but really good insight, and talks about some Ironman matches and just things like that. And I'm really liking the officials' point of view, because people don't hear that. They're kind of off on their island, and so.
No, I think I tweeted that. I told my guys to listen to that too, because I'm like, require my guys to go down to our youth club and teach, because I think you get a different perspective on technique if you have to teach it.
Right.
What they're officiating too, you get a different perspective on the match if you have to officiate it. So same thing with conversations and viewpoints, is keep consuming good, positive wrestling content. It's going to help you grow.
Right. Well, thanks, Coach. I appreciate it, man.
Oh, no. Keep going. Wrestling philosophy. I'm loving it.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks.
Okay. Take care.